Hello everybody and welcome back to Let's Talk Grand Strategy, where today I would like to introduce my new dynamic population mod for Europa Universalis 4. So, very basically what this mod does is it redistributes development in the world, so it represents historical populations. So what this means is, for example, Ming will start with almost 4,000 development, while some other countries like say England have decreased development, or also Scandinavia has decreased development compared to vanilla EU4, and mostly India and China have increased development. If we take a look around the world, all the black provinces are 3 development provinces, so much of Africa, much of Siberia, and all the parts of America that are not in Mesoamerica or in the Incan lands are basically, have a very low population. And one development in the game is now supposed to represent 25,000 people. So what this means is that Ming here, for example, with almost 4,000 development, almost has 100 million people living in the country. So all these development values are roughly based on historical populations around this era. Of course, it's not perfect. For example, Norway should have way lower development than this, but I can hardly decrease the development more without making the provinces have literally no base tax, base production, or base manpower. But anyways, enough talking about that. I think you understand what I'm saying here. Development redistributed to represent population. The other part of this mod, and to see the other part, let's really quickly jump into the game as the Ming. The other part is that this population is going to grow, and it is going to grow if some conditions are met. So the population is going to grow in all provinces around the world as long as those provinces are not devastated. And it is going to grow quicker the more developed the province already is. So say, for example, Beijing here with a development of 48 is going to grow a lot faster than some province up here with a development of 3. In effect, it's directly tied to development. So a province with 30 development is going to grow 10 times faster than a province with 3 development, and so on. The way this happens in-game is with province events for anyone interested, and those events fire more often depending on the current development of a province. And what this means is that if we look at Ming's development really quickly, it's at 3,888. Let's unpause and let the game run for 2 or 3 months, and we should see Ming's development increase. If you're wondering, the development, the events that increase the population basically are hidden events, so you can't see them actually in-game. And I've done that to ensure that you're not spammed with events. Like, I've tried it having them visible, but then if you play as someone like Ming, you're almost every month gonna have an event fire that increases the development of one of your provinces by 3. But that's the first part of this. The provinces are slowly going to grow as long as they are not devastated. The other part is that if they get devastated, and to demonstrate, it's kind of hard to demonstrate because the events fire somewhat slowly, but I'll maybe just explain real quick. If a province reaches a devastation level of 12, then every month there is a low percentage chance that the province is going to decrease in development by 3, as long as it has at least 4 development in total. So what this means is that all the provinces in the world can also be completely depopulated if there's too much devastation going on in them. So you really want to keep your country safe, and you want to keep your population safe, and you want to ensure that your population does not die due to devastation. And I think there's a really cool system because it can create very, very different outcomes. It can mean that Ming remains super stable and the country grows to 10,000 development by the end of the game. Or it can mean that Ming implodes, is in constant wars, is in constant rebellions, and maybe the development is even lower than this by the end of the game. Although on average, most countries will of course be growing throughout the game. One other change I've introduced with the mod is I've increased, as you can see for Ming, quite substantially increased their governing capacity just to ensure that they can handle all the new development. If we look at most other nations, so just look at some smaller nations here, we can see they still have quite a lot of governing capacity, just so countries can handle all the growth they are going to experience throughout the game. And then finally, what I've introduced is a decision. Oh, and I see that for some reason the title and description isn't working. Let me fix that real quick, 1 second. Alright, so as you can tell, yeah, I'm still bug fixing the mod as we speak. All of this should of course be working as soon as I put it on the workshop. But anyways, here's the decision. It's called Draft New Soldiers. And what the decision does is whenever you have less than 10% manpower reserves and you are at war or there is a rebellion going on in your country and you have some province that still has a little bit of population, then you can click this button right here and it's going to give you some manpower and it's going to decrease the development in one of your provinces. So these three systems, your growing population through events, your declining population through devastation, and your declining population through drafts, will mean that, yeah, your population is really dynamic and is going to grow or going to decline depending on how well you do and how well you manage your country. Let's finally maybe take a little look around the world to just see the development amounts in the different countries. So of course Ming starts by far as the biggest country in the world, as we can see, with 3,800 development. After them come a couple of Indian countries, all the larger Indian countries that all have around 400 development, which as I said would translate to about 10 million people living there. Sorry for the dog whining in the background if you can hear that. And then we can see the biggest European countries like France or the Ottomans are at 250, 200, so they're at something like 5 to 7.5 million people living there. And the poorest countries in the world at free development, well, that would of course represent something like 75,000 people living on Corfu or on Cyprus at this time, which again, I'm not sure if it's 100% accurate. It's not going to be completely accurate for all provinces, but I've tried to make it pretty accurate. So you can see I've tried to give the Mamluks their development along the Nile River where the people would live. I've tried to give development along most of the important river valleys that were historically very populated, to give development in all of Ming's lands that are of course very, very populated historically, to give a lot of development in the Ganges River Valley in northern India, because that was like a historical population center. In Europe, we can see, development going on in the Hungarian plains, development going on in lots of France. Also, interestingly, something that I didn't know, a lot of development going on in Castile, especially compared to its neighbors Portugal or Aragon, because apparently Castile had a lot more population than them, according to, Wikipedia that I found. And I think that's so much, that's all there is to say about what the mod does. I think it makes the game much more dynamic, much more interesting. It actually gives you a reason to want to protect your country, because devastation is now truly, devastating and will deplete your development. And I would say let's unpause the game and let's just see how it's going. So I'll let it run for a little while and then I'll come back and maybe tell you how the world developed with all these changes and how the populations of different countries have changed. Once again, one final time, let's take a quick look. Yeah, Ming is already growing from 3888 to 3897. It's paused. It's of course not growing if it's paused. Let's just see them going to 3900 whenever that will happen. It's of course random, so even Ming might not be growing for a year, or they might be growing twice a month. It can happen anytime. There we go. Now Ming is over 3900. Jaunpur has also grown, I believe. Yeah. Anyways, I'll cut you off right here and I'll come back in a little while to tell you how all the different countries are doing. One more thing I forgot to mention, you might have noticed that some countries' borders look slightly different. For example, France doesn't start with as many puppets as they usually have, or Bavaria starts as an existing country, which it usually doesn't. Yeah, some of the population data, I've modded that like over a year ago now, so I've edited the province files for all these populations over a year ago now, which means that some of the province data is from over a year ago, back when EU4 was a little different, with not having French puppets, or with not having Bavaria at the start, and several other smaller differences. So just to let you know why that's in the mod. That's not really intentional, but I can't be bothered to redo the population data for all 4,000 provinces EU4 has. So I'd rather just use the old data. That also means that there are some slight differences in the country setup. I hope that doesn't bother you, but yeah, I personally don't think it's a big problem at all. Just wanted to let you know about that. By the way, what we are seeing is that Ming is already using the draft button quite frequently, as you can see by their manpower going up in increments of 5,000 people. Or 5,000 soldiers, I suppose. So yeah, the AI will always use this button when it can, or I guess once a month use this button when it can, because it checks for decisions once a month, I believe. Which helps the AI in that it doesn't run out of manpower as quickly, but it also of course means that their development might be decreasing month over month. It will be kind of hard to see right here because Ming's development is also growing pretty quick, but yeah, we saw it decrease by 3 just then, and now we saw it grow massively because they pieced out some nation and took some new provinces. Okay, but yeah, anyways, just to let you know, that's why Ming I guess wasn't growing quite as quickly as they could there, but they're still growing really quick, and now they've hit 100 million people. Which makes them, let's just see in the world maybe real quick. Yeah, makes them 10 times bigger than any other but one nation. So Jaunpur is the only other nation in the world that even has 1/10 of Ming's population right now. Also, the 100 Years' War is currently happening, and that means that France occupies these English provinces for quite a long time, which might mean that we see population decreases. For example, I can't pronounce the name, Caen, whatever. Caen here has 12 development right now. Let's check in at the end of the war because it's over 12 devastation. So yeah, let's check at the end of the war if Caen's population will have decreased down. And France has just pieced out the English, and we can see that the population here has decreased from 12 down to 9. So that means that this years-long occupation of this province has, killed off 75,000 out of the 300,000 people that lived in Caen before. We can also see, I believe Labour didn't start with just 3 developments, so certainly the development here has decreased, and probably also in these other northern provinces here it has decreased. By the way, why is 3 development now shown as red and before it was shown as black? I have no idea whatsoever. Alright, it's 1454, we've gone 10 years into the game. This is what the development map looks like. I don't think you can see that much difference yet on it. Maybe you can see that some of the North American miners have grown by 3. Let's quickly take a look at the development around here. Of course, most of the countries that have significantly grown in terms of the development here will have done so by conquest, not necessarily or not mainly by pure growth. But yeah, we now see several countries over 400 development already, several in India. So yeah, that's how the world is developing. Also, one more thing I really quickly wanted to talk about is, as some of you might know, growth can be very dangerous, specifically if it's exponential growth, because it might get out of hand. So how is this game dealing with that, or how is this mod dealing with that, with exponential growth not getting too large? Well, the way I've set it up is that on average, for a province to double its development will take around 200 years. So it has happened to quite a few of the North American minor nations here already, but you can see most of them haven't gotten any development growth whatsoever so far. And what that means, that development takes 200 years to double on average, is that say Ming was insanely stable, didn't have any devastation, didn't need the draft decision a single time throughout the game, then their development would grow from the about 4,000 they start with to about 16,000 by the end of the game, which is of course quite an insane amount of development. However, if we again say that one development is 25,000 people, and that's what this mod assumes, then even the 16,000 development at the end of the game would mean 400 million people living in Ming. And again, if we look at historical population data, that's not too far from reality. So of course it wasn't Ming, it was the Qing Empire. I don't know how to pronounce that either. But yeah, the Qing Empire around the 1800 had something like 400 million people. They had some extra lands around here, so it wasn't just these core lands in which 400 million people lived. But as we know, these extra lands, they aren't super populous. So in essence, if we look at it historically, then we could say that the Chinese rulers were quite good in keeping their population safe from any massive die-offs. There was no time where China was completely depopulated by war. There were, of course, super destructive wars in China in this time frame that cost millions of people their lives. But again, in-game, the growth can multiply by something like ×4 if you are really good at keeping your country safe. It shouldn't be more than that, because then I think it would just get out of hand and you would have most countries ending up with development values in the thousands. We only want that for the major countries by the end of the game. But I also think it shouldn't be much less than that, because really we want growth to happen, and we want growth to happen in a somewhat historical manner, or in a somewhat historical amount. So the world population did increase quite significantly between 1400 and 1800. If I'm not mistaken, it was something like 2.5 times higher by 1800 than by 1400. So I think that's reflected quite well in the game, with the base growth being ×4, but that of course being limited by devastation and by drafts. So on average, I hope that we're gonna see, if I let this run till 1800, that we're gonna see the world population around 2.5 times higher than it was at game start. I'm not sure I'm gonna let it run that far though, and also I don't know if there's any good way to see the total world population. So all of that is just very theoretical stuff, I guess, not really something we're gonna test right now. But yeah, that's how it should play out in the game, if everything goes according to plan. Also, I guess an interesting new tactic that this allows in the game is something like Guerilla Warfare. So this random AI war that we're seeing right here, Epirus is fighting Naples. Of course, Naples is most likely gonna win because they're much stronger. But Epirus is quite successful in sieging down a lot of Naples lands, and that causes devastation. And if that devastation grows large enough, they might kill off a significant portion of the Nepalese population. And in the end, conquering this 6 development province right here might not be worth the amount of population that Naples is losing in this war. So, well, it really makes you think about wars, I guess, in a different way, because if you can't keep your whole country protected, and if you can't ensure that you're not going to run out of manpower and need to use the draft in wars, then in the end, even if you gain lands at the end of the war, overall you might lose population in any given war, and you might be weaker coming out of any war. So a very good strategy could be the kind of historical Great Britain strategy. I'm absolutely joking here. But yeah, the strategy of just, you know, sitting on your island, not getting involved in any continental wars you don't necessarily have to get involved in, and just waiting for your population to grow big and strong. I guess in a way that's what happened historically, because at the start of the game, France's population is many times larger than England's population, as you can see quite impressively here on the population map mode or development map mode. But by the end of the game in the 1820s, Great Britain, at least, you know, including Ireland and everything, and France pretty much had the same population, if I remember correctly from all the Wikipedia statistics I was looking at. So yeah, just sitting on your island, keeping your country at peace, and letting your provinces grow without any devastation, without any draft, is a very viable strategy now, and is a very viable strategy that might, as I said before, result in your population quadrupling or growing 4 times bigger by the end of the game. Yeah, let's see if England does that here, and if England ends up with a comparable population to the French by the end, because I assume the French are going to get involved in a lot more wars and in more destructive wars, because probably their lands will be sieged at some point. So yeah, around 20 years have passed now, and what we start seeing is that a lot of this land is slowly starting to grow at least a little bit. So yeah, about 1 in 10 provinces here should have had at least one development event where it got 3 more development. Please keep in mind that, of course, not all of this development growth is caused by these development events. There's also random events that give you a little bit of development. There is also, of course, the option for the AI to develop its provinces manually. So you might see somewhat more development growth here than is purely caused by the events that this mod adds. Same thing here, of course, there might be more countries growing quicker here than you would expect from them. But yeah, just to let you know about that. Let's see Ming's development. They're up to 4,300 development. And they have conquered some lands, of course, as I said before. That's part of the reason. Also, I want to take a quick look now that England has lost its French lands, just so we can see maybe the difference in population. France is at 426 total development, so over 10 million people. England is at 180 development, which is not that good at maths, but something like 2 million people, something like that, I believe. Well, no, slightly lower than that, so like 1.8 million people. Is that right? No, that's not right. I'm being dumb here, am I not? Yeah, I think I'm being really, really dumb. No, this is like 4 million people. Excuse me and my maths. All right, and it's 1530, so almost 100 years have passed in the game. So I want to take one final look before I end this video. So this is what the development map mode looks like in 1530. As you can see, a lot more colorful. A lot more provinces have, of course, grown by now. And if we look at the development by countries, we can see that Ming is at almost 6,000 development. And Ming have lost some lands, but also conquered quite a lot of lands. So overall, they probably have about the same amount of land that they had at the start. So this could give you a good indication of how much their population has actually grown. So it's about gone from 4,000 to 6,000, so about grown by 50% in this time frame. I assume it's about the same for other countries, although for other countries their size has also probably changed a lot, so it's harder to see how much growth actually happened with them, because a lot of their growth is, of course, from just conquering new provinces. So yeah, Delhi is quite large now, of course, but a lot of that, as I said, is probably just from conquering. If we look at the different provinces, the largest provinces in the world are already at like 120, 130 development. So you could imagine by the end of the game, these provinces will get to something like 300 development, maybe even. If, of course, they don't get devastated or anything like that. In Europe, we can see England has, as I said, managed to sit on their island and grow quite a bit larger. France, on the other hand, is not doing so well, and a lot of their provinces are in fact at 3 development, so a lot of their provinces have suffered quite significant devastation. Also, I imagine the first colonies are starting by this point. Yeah, okay, they're very small right now though, so we can't really say too much about development in the colonies so far. But yeah, obviously the same rules apply to colonies, so colonies would also grow by about the same speeds. And yeah, that should give you a good quick overview of this mod and of how much growth you can expect with this mod. I might of course be rebalancing all of these different modifiers, like how quickly provinces grow, how soon devastation, or how quickly devastation kills off local populations, and so all of that is of course yeah, subject to change, but fundamentally I think it makes the game a lot more interesting if yeah, populations are this dynamic and this much change in populations happens in the world. So anyways, thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you check out the mod. Again, a link to it will of course be in the description of this video. And see you next time. Bye bye.